I, 33 male, have been married to my wife, 30 female, for 7 years. It felt like my wife and I were working to get our life together for a long time. Eventually, we bought a house because I finally saved enough money. She was making money too, but it was barely above minimum wage. My job required that I travel a lot, and at the most I would be gone for 1 week at a time. We made it work by video calling and texting a lot. However, it became clear that my time away bothered her. She would go out with friends often and started doing that even when I was home. This was devastating to me because I thought if she loved me she would spend as much time with me as possible. One night, we were both home and she was absorbed in her phone. I finally had enough and asked her what was going on. She became defensive immediately and said that she didn't feel close to me anymore because I wasn't home often enough. I reminded her that she suggested I get this job so we could afford nice things in life. She said she really enjoyed the relationships she had with her friends and needed that time to release stress. I asked her if I could meet her friends and she said no, that it would be awkward for her to combine her home life with her work life. I was deeply hurt and could tell I wasn't going to persuade her, so I dropped it for the time being. Soon I was told to go on another business trip. I told my wife it would be longer than it really was. When I came home, I could see a shirtless man through the front window of my house. I swear it was like my heart stopped beating. I assumed it was one of her co-workers, but when I got closer it turned out to be our married neighbor from down the street. Out of all the people my wife could be cheating on me with, it was someone I knew. He came to our house with his wife a month ago for a barbecue and for all I knew that's when their affair started. I watched through the window easily, getting a clear view of them kissing and touching like they were a couple. I walked back to my car and called the guy's wife. These were neighbors we exchanged numbers with and asked to watch our house when we went away. She answered and I asked her if she knew where her husband was. She was very confused and said he was working late. I played it cool and just told her there was a package accidentally delivered to our house. She arrived minutes later to get the fictional package. I watched from my car as my wife opened the door in her robe. They talked for a moment, confused until the woman's husband came into view behind my wife. The woman started screaming and asking a lot of questions, trying to enter the house. As the scene escalated, I called my wife's parents. I told them it was nice knowing them and their daughter, but I was going to leave her because she cheated on me. They were shocked and started asking questions. I told them if they wanted to know what was going on, they could come to our house now for a surprise on what was happening. I wanted them to witness their daughter's affair in case she tried to spin the narrative. While they drove over, I walked straight into my house. My wife tried talking to me through yelling and sobs as she was being attacked by the other woman and her husband tried holding her back. It was a huge mess and drama that I was not about to get caught up in. I went straight to the traveling bag that I kept packed in case of a short notice trip. I walked back out of the house and told my wife she needed to leave with her parents when they arrived. This confused and panicked her. She clarified that her parents were coming and I simply nodded as I put my bag in my car. I sat in my locked car until her parents arrived and our neighbors refused to leave. The cheating man was trying to convince his wife to leave it alone, but she was not having it. She got in several slaps when my wife let down her guard and slapped her husband whenever possible. Obviously, all the questions in the world wouldn't make sense of unexpected infidelity. Nothing could soothe this betrayal. When my wife's parents arrived, I left. I don't know how they sorted out everything, but when I returned to my house one day later, the door was unlocked and a few things of mine were missing. After I filed for divorce, the calls, messages, and texts from my wife majorly increased. She was appalled by my sudden actions and wanted a chance to talk about what happened. I didn't care. I wanted a wife that wouldn't cheat on me and I wasn't going to get that from her. She lived with her disappointed parents and at the divorce hearing, she looked ragged and tired. She didn't work the same job anymore and certainly didn't look happy. I found a ton of support from my friends and family. While everyone turned against her because of her irresponsibility and selfishness. I started dating again, but I'm mostly just relieved to be free from my ex and have my house back. Wow, Opie, I'm so proud of you for keeping your cool as all of this went down. You managed to inform everyone necessary of what was going on so that you could emerge from this unscathed. Of course, this excludes the emotional turmoil involved in this betrayal, but I have faith in your ability to stay focused on your life's goals. It was so great you were able to call the guy's wife and have her come do the brunt of the work for you. Your wife deserved all of the stress and slack she endured. You were right to end the marriage, and I'm sure you'll find a woman much better than your ex-wife. I wish you the best of luck with overcoming this situation. Now for today's second story. We started dating in September 2018 on my birthday, so that day has always been extra special to me. My partner does roster work. She works 8 days on a mine site and is back 6 days off. I work a decent 9-to-5 job, so we are both pretty well off. She's also an international resident, so I decided to help her get her visa to stay. We applied for the de facto spouse visa at the end of 2020. For the first 3.5 years our relationship was really good. We both loved each other and were doing so much together. Unfortunately, some clashes between her and my mom led to us moving out and renting a place for 6 months. She knew how to do everything. She's extremely independent, so she knew how to take care of a house and cooked really good food. I, on the other hand, was a bit of a dropkick and didn't know how to do any of that properly. My mom looked after me a bit too much, which handicapped me a lot when I moved out. Whilst I was working every day and being very smart with our money, we never had any money problems. I was also a bit selfish as a 23-year-old who tended to spend a bit too much time at the computer and away from household chores. I did make sure I spent some time with her though. We watched some good shows like Game of Thrones, Money Heist, and Merlin. I did, however, clean enough to ensure we got 100% of our bond money back. I did all the de-weeding by hand. After our 6-month lease was finally up, we bought a place together. This was around September 2021. She started her mining job around December 2021. And I, still being a dropkick, didn't do much of the housework. Although I did learn to cook some dishes as I needed to make sure I kept myself fed whilst she was on site. But I still didn't do the laundry or vacuum and mop the floor because my standard of cleanliness was so much different from hers. Instead, I spent my time learning how to invest because she told me she wanted to make a lot of money. I designed an investment plan just to suit her. I enjoyed investing a lot, cleaning not so much. In April of 2022, and she broke down in our bedroom at my lack of help around the house, she told me she was incredibly stressed with having to come back and do all the housework after 8 long days on the mine site. At that stage, I finally woke up and became the adult I should have become long ago. I started vacuuming and mopping the whole house once a fortnight and doing the laundry every week, making sure she had an empty basket to work with when she came back. It was like a switch was flicked on in my head. I should also mention that sex was non-existent in the last year of our relationship. She didn't want to take the pill due to side effects, although she was on it periodically for the first 3 years, and we had sex then. I went to buy a pack of condoms, but then she went and hid the condoms when we were about to have sex, so I just refused to have sex with her because I didn't want to have unprotected sex and risk pregnancy. She even suggested that I take the male version of the pill that would make my sperm infertile or something. I don't even know what she was on about there. I kept up my routine, making my own lunches and maintaining the house while she was away. I finally became an adult that could survive on my own, but the relationship didn't seem to improve. Slowly over time, she stopped cooking for me and didn't like me touching her in bed. She also gave me her cheek for kisses instead of her lips. Looking back, these were all red flags, but I was blinded by love and my desperation to save the relationship. I kept up with the cleaning and maintenance. She even went back on the pill to balance her hormones, or so she claimed. I tried initiating sex with her again at that point, but she refused. And then came September 17, 2022. I was mopping the floor in my computer room and couldn't use it because the floor was wet. I went to use her laptop instead and saw everything in Messenger. She had been in a casual but intimate relationship with a man on the mine site a little younger than me. The text messages were extremely explicit. I saw they had this going on since late July. I couldn't go any further back because I was about to throw up. I confronted her about it that night and she told me she had been extremely stressed with work and had fallen out of love. I didn't understand. She loved me when I was a total tropic. Then all of a sudden, I became this mature and capable adult, but she didn't love me anymore. I was a total wreck for the next week and couldn't sleep well. I decided to call things off with her. I cannot be with someone who commits infidelity. We are going to split up our assets and go our separate ways. She told me she wants to remain friends, but I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon, nor do I think that's a good idea for either of us. This also has implications for her visa. She is currently on her temporary visa until the end of November this year, at which point we were supposed to sign off on some documents so she could get her permanent residency. I told her I refused to sign any documentation as I basically would have to lie, which could get me sent to jail along with a big fine. She may still be able to get her permanent residency if the department decides to award it to her, but she is at a much greater risk of having to go back to a student visa, which means she will lose her mining job. Along with her life savings of having to enroll in some course, she doesn't want to complete and pay international student fees, which are bloody expensive. Along with wasting years of her life just to progress her spouse visa all for nothing. This was an exit affair. By the time she began crying to you about your lack of effort, she had already checked out. She unfortunately chose the most immature way to do it. At least you can use this as your own learning experience and personal growth. You didn't deserve to be cheated on. She could have been honest at any time. It would be best if you get to no contact as quickly as possible. Don't kick yourself too much. You were 20 years old when you entered into this relationship. You showed a great deal of maturity when you changed your behavior to help your partner and the relationship. Regardless, you have dodged a bullet and you will be better off without her. A young man who is capable of living on his own and who can cook and clean is a huge plus in the dating field. Enjoy being single. Thank you for taking the time to listen to today's stories. Hold of stability. My company, a tech distribution firm, isn't the talk of Wall Street, but it holds its own just as I do in my life. There's always been one person by my side, one foundation that remained unshaken, Tanya, my wife. We met in college. She was full of energy and I was very organized. That's how our love story began. We balanced each other out and I saw a future in her eyes. We married young and our relationship was a testament to our shared commitment. Tanya, a striking woman, even as age began to gently touch her, was the pillar of my personal universe. Her laugh was like music. We were very close friends for 20 years. It's hard to forget that bond. But as of late, I found myself grappling with doubts. Tanya, who used to find comfort in our cozy home, now seemed to be frequently drawn towards business trips. These trips came with her job, a marketing manager position at a multinational firm. They were part of our routine, but their frequency began to rise. I noticed the changes slowly. She used to call often and talk about everyday things and laugh, but now her calls were few and far between and brief. She started to spend more time in front of the mirror, choosing outfits, doing her hair, her usual jeans and t-shirt replaced by sharp suits, her ponytail often let loose. She joined a fitness club, her evenings often spent sweating out the frustration she wouldn't voice. I saw it all, but my mind refused to acknowledge the signs. The fabric of trust we had woven over years appeared too strong to be torn by suspicion. I thought it was work pressure. I told myself it was a phase. Maybe she was dealing with the midlife crisis of her own, seeking the adventure. She thought our settled life lacked to ease her stress. I did what I could. I took over household chores, organized surprise date nights, expensive weekend getaways, even planned a vacation to rekindle our spark. Nothing worked, not a single thing. I just figured the Tanya I married had vanished. I told myself it was just a rough patch, a phase that would pass. After all, we have been through plenty together, ups and downs, failures and triumphs, losses and gains. This too, I thought we would overcome. Well, as it seemed the joke was on me. Well, fast forward a few weeks, Tanya's behavior changes, initially subtle, became more pronounced. She was on her phone well into the night, something she had never done. And sometimes when she was texting and she was sitting next to me, she would tilt her phone away from me. Her sudden fascination with fitness and fashion was another puzzle piece. Tanya had never been vain. Comfort had always won over style in her books. However, now she spent hours at the local gym, returning home with the glow I hadn't seen in years. New clothes started to fill her wardrobe, bold and stylish, replacing her old comfy staples. She started experimenting with makeup, trying out looks she'd previously only scoffed at. These changes were not wrong. They were not incriminating, but they were uncharacteristic. The woman who loved to cuddle on the couch with the book was slowly disappearing, replaced by the new version of Tanya I could barely recognize. I started to get real suspicious because her behavior didn't go away. It got worse. So I was going to do some snooping to see what I could find on my own. First, I looked at our credit card statements and bank accounts. I didn't find anything out of the ordinary. I saw the usual stuff she bought her makeup from, but nothing overly expensive. And of course I checked her phone and our phone records, nothing that was surprising considering she was on her phone quite a bit. Finding no answers from Tanya's phone and all the other places I looked, I turned to a more desperate measure, hiring a private investigator. Shortly after contacting and conferring with the private investigator, I gave him Tanya's daily routine, her hangouts, and the usual times she was going to the gym. After just 10 days, the private investigator delivered his first report. Inside were photographs of Tanya with the man. I did not recognize he was younger, clearly affluent. And from the intimate way they interacted, it was apparent they were more than just friends. This was Alex, as the investigator identified him, a high-flyer entrepreneur, someone who was evidently part of Tanya's life. Seeing their proof of her betrayal was heartbreaking. For a fleeting moment, I thought of confronting Tanya to demand an explanation for the betrayal, to ask why she chose to shatter our life together. But then an idea took root: darker plan. I decided to let the scenario play out a little longer. Why should I expose my hand when the game was just getting interesting? So I put on a brave face, played the role of the trusting husband while the wheels of my head kept turning, devising a course of action that would serve justice in my own way. It wasn't just about Tanya anymore. It was about Alex, the man who thought he could infringe upon my life without consequences. I started collecting information about him, his business, his social life, his vulnerabilities. Every empire has its weakness. And so did Alex's. His business was thriving. Yes, but he'd made enemies. He had vices that he believed were well hidden. It all became ammunition in my hands, tools to dismantle the life he held dear: revenge. I decided it wouldn't be swift. It would be slow, meticulous, ensuring that with each passing day, Alex would lose something: a business deal, a friend, his reputation. I was in no hurry. After all, the sweetest revenge is savored slowly. I was going to take apart his life piece by piece, just like he did mine and Tanya. Well, she'd be watching from the sidelines, just as oblivious as I was when the cheating started. She'd witnessed the ruin without ever knowing that she was the reason behind it. All yes. The thought of it felt satisfying. Alex was a self-proclaimed tech visionary, a smart individual who'd managed to attract a decent amount of investment for his startup. A startup, however, that was teetering on the brink of financial collapse. The company had developed a promising product, but the revenues were not meeting their expectations and the investors were getting restless. I slowly began my assault using a series of shell corporations and anonymous accounts. I started buying up Alex's company debt, a 5% here, a 10% there, never enough to raise suspicions, but always enough to slowly tip the balance of power in my favor. With every debt purchased, I was effectively buying a piece of his, gaining control over the company. He had poured his heart and soul into every bond, every bank loan, every IOU that Alex had ever signed was slowly, but surely landing in my portfolio. I wasn't just a silent partner anymore. I was a larger stakeholder in his sinking ship of a company, and the best part, Alex had no idea who was pulling the strings throughout the process. I maintained my facade at home, a loving, trusting husband, ignorant of Tanya's betrayal. The mask was beginning to fit me all too well. The smile never faltered. The conversation never waned. The plan was coming together. Alex's company was slowly becoming my puppet. I was just waiting for the right moment to start pulling the strings. Alex's startup was a house of cards waiting to be toppled over. And I held the win in my hands, leveraging the control I had gained over his company's financial lifelines. I initiated a sequence of events that started the avalanche. I pulled strings here, nudged levers there using my business experience to orchestrate a symphony of corporate catastrophe, a questionable decision by the board, a key investor backing out an unfortunate leak of bad financial results. And soon enough, the company's stock started a free fall. Alex's tech dream was turning into a nightmare played out in the glaring light of financial news networks. The vultures of the press circled his reputation, which began to tarnish in the public eye as his failing leadership came into focus through it all. Tanya remained oblivious. She continued her secret rendezvous lost in the charm of Alex, unaware of the iceberg. Her love ship was rapidly steering towards my sweet Tanya, unaware of what was about to hit her and her lover boy as the stock of Alex's company plummeted, so did his dreams, his hopes, and most importantly, his appeal. I was setting the stage for the ultimate fall, and Tanya unknowingly was about to watch the grand spectacle with Alex's finances in disarray and his company's reputation in shambles. I decided it was time to strike the final blow. The third act of my revenge plan involved leveraging my long-standing ties with law enforcement, using them to unearth the skeleton I knew Alex had in his closet. I contacted an old friend, a veteran detective known for his tenacity in uncovering financial irregularities. A quick chat over a round of golf, a casual mention of some questionable business practices I heard about Alex's firm, and the seeds were sown. The detective, intrigued by the potential lead, initiated an investigation. I had strategically provided him with a breadcrumb trail that led him right to the bones of Alex's unscrupulous past. It turned out that Alex, in his desperation to keep his failing startup afloat, had engaged in fraudulent financial activities. The news broke on a quiet Tuesday, with the same media that once lauded Alex's entrepreneurial success now gleefully reporting his downfall. His arrest was nothing short of a spectacle. His face, now synonymous with corporate greed and deception, was paraded on every news channel. As I watched from the privacy of my home, a sense of satisfaction washed over me. Alex was a man broken, financially crippled. His reputation tarnished, and now a criminal in the eyes of the law. His world was collapsing around him, just like mine did when I discovered his affair with Tanya. Tanya, on the other hand, was just beginning to comprehend the gravity of her choices. The man she had risked our marriage for was nothing more than a fraud, but my revenge was not complete. Oh no, not yet. Tanya, now disillusioned by the whirlwind of events, was visibly shaken. Her secret love affair was out in the open. Her dream man was nothing but a sham, and she was left alone to pick up the pieces of her shattered fantasy. One evening, as Tanya sat in the quiet of our home, I decided it was time for the confrontation, the final act in this play of betrayal and revenge. I recounted the entire narrative, the initial suspicion, my discovery of her affair, and my revenge on Alex, as I revealed my role in Alex's downfall. Tanya's face went through a spectrum of emotions: disbelief, shock, horror, and finally a deep-seated guilt. She tried to justify her actions, tried to apologize, but I was unmoved. Her words echoed around the room, empty and meaningless, fueled by the revelations and their aftermath. I initiated the divorce proceedings. The man Tanya had left me for was now penniless, his reputation in shambles, and Tanya, she had nothing left to bargain with. I ensured that my lawyer was one of the best in the business. He left no stone unturned as he prepared the divorce papers, ensuring that every legal loophole was plugged and every term was in my favor. Tanya, for her part, seemed to accept the inevitable. She didn't contest the divorce. Didn't even try to negotiate the terms. The process of splitting our shared assets began. The house, the cars, the vacation homes, the stocks, everything we had acquired over the years was now just a matter of paperwork. And then came the day of the final hearing. The judge went through the motions, asked us if we were sure, and the judge granted the divorce. She didn't get any alimony, but she got one of the homes, a few stocks, and one of the cars. The news of our divorce spread fast. Friends, family, colleagues all came forward with their advice and their support. In Alice's case, the detective said he bonded out of jail, but that's all he could tell me. About 8 months after the divorce, Tanya sold the vacation home she was awarded in the divorce. I never saw or heard from her again.